In a small Austrian village, there is a Catholic chapel. It sits beside a cemetery at the edge of the lake. Inside, on wooden shelves, there are over 1,200 human skulls. Each one has been painted. Flowers, vines, oak leaves. Delicate patterns that took hours to complete. And each skull has a name, written in careful script across the forehead. The name of the person it once belonged to. Their date of birth. Their date of death. These are not anonymous remains. These are specific people. Named people. People whose grandchildren still live in this village. And the last skull was added in 1995, not 1795, not 1895. The village of Hallstatt sits between a mountain and a lake in the Austrian Alps. The valley is so narrow, there is almost no room to exist. The mountain rises on one side. The lake fills the other. Every building is pressed against the next, including the cemetery. For centuries, the Catholic cemetery beside this chapel filled with the dead. And there was nowhere to put more. So the church made a decision. After a body had rested in the ground for 10 to 15 years, it was dug up. The bones were removed, cleaned carefully, and carried into the chapel. The grave was then ready for the next person who died. This was not secret. This was not shameful. The community knew. The families knew. The priest stood at the graveside and blessed each exhumation. It was simply what this Catholic village did. For some families, the exhumation was an occasion. They would gather. They would receive the bones of their mother, their father, their child. They would carry them into the chapel themselves, and they would begin to wait for what came next. And then, around 1720, they began to paint. No one recorded the moment the painting started. No priest wrote down the theology behind it. No family left a letter explaining why they decided to decorate the skull of their mother or father or child. The tradition simply began and grew and became more elaborate with each generation. The earliest skulls are simply painted. A name, a few lines, a date. The later ones are different. The flowers are detailed. A rose for a beloved wife. Wheat stalks for a farmer. An oak wreath for an elder the village respected. The vines curl around the eye sockets with the care of someone who is not rushing, who wants this to be beautiful because they loved the person whose skull this was, and they needed to do something with that. Love. Think about that for a moment. Someone sat down with a paintbrush and the skull of their grandmother and spent an entire afternoon making it beautiful. Not in grief, not in horror, not in care. In the same way, you might spend an afternoon making something beautiful for someone you loved while they were still alive, only they were gone. And this was what remained. And this was what love looked like in Hallstatt in the 18th century. And the 19th century and the 20th century, all the way to 1995. The Catholic Church teaches that the body is sacred, that it awaits the resurrection, that human remains deserve dignity and rest. For centuries, the Church refused to allow cremation for precisely this reason. The body had to be preserved, waiting, ready for the day when God would call it back to life. The Church in Hallstatt approved all of this. The exhumations, the cleaning of the bones, the painting, the public display on wooden shelves for anyone to see, not reluctantly, not with theological reservations. The charnel house was blessed. The skulls inside are considered to be in consecrated care. A priest visits. Prayers are said. The dead are tended. And the Vatican never objected. Not once. Not in 275 years. There are families in Hallstatt today who visit the chapel and point to a shelf. That skull is my great-grandmother. Her name is written across her forehead. The flowers her family painted for her surround it. Her birth year, her death year. She has been on that shelf for 100 years. She will be there for 100 more. Now, consider the two things this place is asking you to hold at the same time. The first is devotion. In most places, the dead are buried and eventually forgotten. The gravestone weathers. The inscription fades. Within 3 generations, the person is gone. Not just from the world, but from memory. Think of your own family. How far back can you go? How many names do you know? How many faces? Most of us lose our ancestors within 100 years. The grandchildren of the grandchildren cannot say what their great-grandmother looked like, cannot say what made her laugh, cannot say what she feared or hoped for. She becomes a name on a document somewhere. And then not even that. In Halstead, this was refused. The painted skull is a statement. This person existed. This person had a name. This person mattered to us. And we are not going to let you forget it. By this reading, what the community of Halstead built is one of the most tender acts of remembrance in the history of Christian burial. But the second thing this place asks you to hold is harder. Look at the skulls. Again, the person whose skull sits on that shelf did not choose this. When you were born in Halstead, when you were baptized in this chapel, when you were buried in this cemetery, no one told you that in 15 years your skull would be dug up, painted with flowers, and placed on a shelf for strangers to look at. You did not consent. Your family decided for you. And perhaps they decided out of love. Perhaps the painting was the only way they knew how to hold on, to keep the conversation going, to refuse the silence that death insists on. But perhaps it was also something else. Perhaps the living needed this more than the dead did. Perhaps the painted skull was never really for the person who died. Perhaps it was for the ones left behind, who could not bear to let go. The tradition continued this way for 275 years. The last person to have their skull added died sometime before 1995. Their family brought the skull to the painter, chose the flowers, wrote the name, placed it on the shelf, and that was considered an act of love, whether it was love or whether it was something the living needed. And the dead were never asked about. That question sits in the air of this chapel. It has sat there since 1720. The Halstead Bone House is still open. Local families still visit. Tourists come from across the world. Some know what they are going to find. Some do not. The ones who do not stop when they walk through the door, and the reaction is almost never what you would expect. It is not fear. It is not disgust. It is something quieter, something that takes longer to name. It is the feeling of being in the presence of people who refuse to let death be the end of a conversation. Some visitors stand in front of a particular skull for a very long time, reading the name, looking at the flowers, wondering who this person was, what they loved, what they feared, whether anyone still remembers them beyond what is written on this bone. Some visitors find this comforting. They feel less alone in their own mortality. They think, someone will remember me too. Some visitors find it unbearable. They leave quickly. They do not look back. Some visitors say nothing at all. They simply stand there in the silence between the shelves. Both reactions are the right reaction. All of them are the right reaction, because the Halstead Bone House does not offer comfort or horror. It offers something rarer and more difficult. It offers honesty. The bones say, this is what remains. This is what we are after everything else falls away. A skull, a name, some flowers that someone chose because they loved us. And the question of whether that is enough, whether that is what any of us would want. Whether any of us would choose to be remembered this way, rather than forgotten peacefully, is a question the chapel places in front of you and does not answer. Whether that is devotion or something more complicated than devotion, the skulls cannot tell you, but they are still watching. They have been watching for a very long time, and not one of them has looked away.